All right, guys. I think we're live on YouTube. No, now we're officially live on YouTube. Okay.
Oh,
Of course, it'll
Yeah.
appear in about 20 seconds. All right, guys.
I heard
think
it.
we're live on YouTube.
I heard it.
Yep. Oh, and we have audio. All right. So, this chat, what we need to get out of the way is why BigPod has only ran Windows here for the last 2 weeks. So, BigPod, go ahead and share with the chat.
Well, for more than a month, I've had a bunch of personal problems I had to deal with, which at the end of the day were mainly because of a few reasons. I overworked myself because I was trying to learn a bunch of stuff. I was looking for a job and still am, which was put on hold because of those problems. And after a while, I got basically overworked, and I was constantly just playing games and nothing more. And I was constantly switching between Windows and Linux. Some games don't work on Linux, I have to play them on Windows. And after a while, I just realized, why, if I'm just playing games, why am I running Linux?
Yeah, just run that on your Windows partition. You've got.
And I booted into Windows, and I haven't. Today was the first time I booted into Linux proper. But I did use VSL for the entire time. I actually decided that I could combine good with useful, and I also spent some time learning the specialities of VSL and all the all the differences that are there with VSL. And I got to say, honestly, for people who either have to use Windows because their job demands it, whether it be for
Microsoft Office.
job reasons like Microsoft Office, whether it be for IT reasons, because reality is having too many different machines, whether it be different machine because there is different operating system, or a different machine because the different machines is a problem for IT department to manage. And
Right.
while Windows has very well integrated Active Directory and directory services, let's say that directory services, where you can manage the OS to the minute level, even more than you can manage on settings. And because of that, uh, Windows is in enterprise very well used. And for those people, VSL is a great choice. And other group is those that are used to the Windows paradigm, where it be because they use it all the time, right? And honestly, switching between them, for me, I'm used to using both for a long time. But someone who is completely new, switching between one and the other could be a problem when you're basically taking all the everything and changing everything. Because even if you just keep the paradigm, I don't know, just the environment you look at, the underneath stack is important. And I also took the time to install Windows 11, so I went full on crazy. And I got to say, Windows 11 is pretty good, but it's no Windows 8. And I'm still gonna be impressed by what, no matter how bad the environment is, the kernel is still probably just as good as Linux, if not better. There are just things on top of it that make it bad. Windows
You're probably the
extremely-
only person I've ever heard that says they love Windows 8.
Correction, Windows 8.1. The only thing missing from Windows 8 was the start button. Everything else was probably great about Windows.
That was the one that introduced the weird blocky widget thingies in the menu.
Yep.
Well,
yes. I
at the
hated
end of the day, for me, I use that all the time. For me, start menu or start screen, whatever you want to call it, same on Linux, is a way to search for programs. I press a start button or super key on Linux, and I type in stuff.
Well, we've got to get the suckless
All it
guys to
is for
port
me.
daemon you to Windows.
That's all it is for me. And
Well,
honestly, the full screen experience was much better than it is with a just a small window menu in the
Yeah.
bottom left corner or in any corner.
I
It's
do
a lot
have
better if it's full screen. A lot more
I do-
information is shown.
I do have to say that I do like Windows 8.1 better than I liked Windows XP.
You
And
guys
Windows XP, well, that's ancient. I mean, you're talking
Well-
about that was released. When did XP come out?
2001.
2000. Yeah, it's just 20 years old now. I mean, it's-
Okay. I am actually honestly kind of convinced because I have this irrational love for a desktop environment that I honestly hate the developers for called GNOME Shell. That
Yeah.
Windows 8 is the Windows 8 workflow is actually a ripoff of the GNOME Shell workflow. Because when you think about it,
No.
hold on,
What?
listen. If you're using desktop Windows 8, the most efficient way that you can run it is the exact same way that you would daily drive GNOME Shell. Because the big thing with Windows 8 is that you hit super key and you just started typing the application name.
Yeah,
But that's what you do in-
It's been basically.
I mean,
even
that's what
on
you do in a lot of
Windows
other
from
stuff.
7 on. They
But
just went for the
hold
look
on,
that
the UI
more
itself
suits-
is also so ugly that you don't even want to look at it. So you just maximize everything too.
In GNOME or Windows? Because
In both.
okay, I was-
well, there is a two different why each went for such a look or such a menu for two different reasons.
very different
Windows-
reasons.
Windows went exclusively because it was targeting touchscreen users, and GNOME went for multiple reasons. One of them is accessibility, because bigger press target, and second is that they thought that this would be better for the users who use such an
Well, you know,
environment.
And GNOME was focused on everything being on its own workspace.
Yeah.
You know, and workspaces aren't really a thing in Windows. I mean, nobody
Hmm.
is. It's not how it was designed, you know.
Yeah,
They're
on
gonna
Windows,
try with Windows 11.
workspaces were already a thing on Windows 10, but they were definitely a different beast
Right.
than it is on Linux.
One thing I did want to address, because I had a question before the show started and one shortly after, because we've already mentioned hitting the super key, and I actually had somebody ask me, I guess they're new to Linux coming from Windows, what the hell is the super key that we
Oh.
keep talking about?
Windows key.
That's the Windows key on most modern keyboards. Back in the day, before the Windows key was the Windows key, you had a lot of more buttons on keyboards. You had a super key, you had a meta key, a hyper key, and the super key is kind of in the same spot that Windows key is in, but on Linux, we're not going to call it the Windows key. We just call it the
we
super
call
key.
it the OG name.
Yeah.
Well,
And then
see,
somebody else
No.
was asking about can they support me on LibrePay? Have I ever considered joining that? I actually did sign up for LibrePay when it first came out, like 3 years ago. So what this is an alternative to something like Patreon, and he's asking, is it free and open source software? It's not really. That's not why. Like the free software community pushes things like LibrePay. It's the anonymity. It's that you can donate and be anonymous, because they're all about paying for stuff anonymously. Ultimately, though, when you're talking about payment processing, when you're talking about anything dealing with banks and credit cards and things like that, nothing's free and open source software running that stuff. It's all proprietary. You're never going to have free and open source banking, at least not anytime in the
Yeah,
foreseeable future. Probably not in my lifetime.
yeah.
So that's not what LibrePay. Anyway, I signed up for it about 3 years ago, created an account. I never had a single donation on it for like 6 months. And then after 6 months, the whole system crashed. Their whole infrastructure crashed. Their payment, the back end stuff on their stuff went down, and they had to completely rewrite everything. So I just got off of it because it was no one used it. No one wants to make an anonymous donation anyway for something like this. It's just not something people were interested. So I got off the platform. If you want to make an anonymous donation, though, we've already got that covered these days with cryptocurrency. Anybody can send me a variety of cryptocurrencies that I have wallets for. So we've already got the being anonymous problem solved. So I don't need LibrePay for that.
So the going back to the Windows key, super key thing, you can actually get stickers now, and in some cases, I think you can actually get keycap replacements to.
I've got one.
Get rid of the Windows logos.
I can't.
Well,
move.
Many keyboards, even nowadays, especially custom keyboards, have different logos on them
Oh,
for
we're talking
the.
about keycaps. I got
Windows
like
key.
1, 2, 3. I got like 5 sets of keycaps.
Let me unplug my Moonlander. Hold up. Just the right hand, and I don't know if you guys can see the blue penguin in this lighting. But that super key was just a normal black key. I bought a blue key with a penguin on it because why not?
Yeah,
Excellent.
with
Mine
mechanical
says
keyboards,
win.
you can do that.
Because if we're going to be hitting the super key, that means that we're winning, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how the Moonlander is going to like being unplugged and plugged back in. Hopefully the firmware and everything still acts right. Let me type something here.
Nah, you don't need
As long as it
keyboard.
doesn't give you wingdings.
Yep. All right. Yep. It's working.
By the way, this hat is entirely too small for my head. Just on a chair.
Can't tell.
But-
Can't tell.
I did notice.
We are today. I am joining you guys through OpenSUSE because the
Oh, I thought you were
community-
going to say that you were sponsored by Lucky Charms. I thought that's where you
no.
were going to go.
but
Gonna talk about a cereal.
well, I mean,
You look like the leprechaun with the hat.
I've got the blue hat too. Although
No,
with this lighting it looks black, but it's actually a
No.
blue hat.
That looks more Amish than
Yeah,
leprechaun.
it does.
Yeah.
But anyways, the community poll over at distro.tube.com this time around has voted, and they have voted for something that I am very passionate about. The options alone were things I was also very passionate about. Unfortunately, nobody wanted me to praise the Church of Root. So
What?
So you guys don't get to hear me being all religious. Instead, it's going to be another time where I'm passionate because everybody wants the winning poll of the vote was your file system sucks. So there's a reason why I'm on OpenSUSE today, because OpenSUSE runs the best file system you guys don't use.
ButterFS. Yeah, I knew where you were going with that.
Questionable.
Is it the best? I don't know.
It is the best.
It depends on which.
Depending on the situation.
Yeah, because certain needs.
In fact, it is so good right now that I am running it on a 4 NVMe disk array, and I am running RAID 6 just to see how long it takes before my file system crashes.
Not the quality of it should never crash unless they have a bad implementation.
And as far as best file system, I mean,
That's too
Extend
high.
4 is proven. XFS is proven. I mean, there's
ZFS is proven.
Okay.
ZFS is.
ext4 does nothing for you. It is absolutely horrible.
Why not?
Like you can't interface it. It has no like command line syntax or anything really.
Sure, or you
Yeah, it
install-
does, but
Why
nobody
do
actually
you-
knows how to use it.
What do you need to do with your file system really, beyond have it installed
That's a good question.
or have it formatted?
That is an
onto your
amazing
system?
question. You know what your file system needs to do for you? It needs
What?
to do everything for you.
No,
Yes.
file system is like an operating system. It should get out of your way.
Yeah.
No.
It-
Your file
it
system
should-
needs to do everything for you. It needs
Once-
to, it
once
needs to
you're
copy
on
your
top of it,
files. That
should
way you
get-
always have redundancy. It needs to take the time to verify the integrity of your files as well. It even needs to be able to put your toast in the toaster and butter it for you.
Ultimately, if you're setting up RAID anyway, what does it matter what your file system is, as long as
Well-
it's not corrupting your data?
Depending on there are software rates based on file systems like in ButterFS, where you have You actually just pull the drives into a pool. Then the file system itself does the rating. It's software-based rating that isn't as slow as normal software RAID. Then you have standard hardware RAID with a hardware controller. The way Btrfs does it, and ZFS for that matter, is currently the most used way, because it is better than hardware RAID, because hardware RAID a lot of the time doesn't let actually all the data about the drives through, and does a million bad things to everything. And if the car dies, everything goes So, and with such a RAID as you have with Btrfs and ZFS, the HBA, the host bus adapter, which is what you plug drives in, if that dies, okay, you plug it back in and that's it.
But you know what the best file system ever, if we were being serious, NTFS was pretty sweet.
No.
Grub cannot boot NTFS on root. I found that out last month.
Who can boot? What can boot NTFS? I didn't hear what can boot.
Grub 2 cannot boot NTFS on root.
For Linux.
Yeah,
possibly.
But it's not a file system for Linux, so
yeah.
Well, no, because NTFS sucks.
Dual
Brian
booter
Ludwig
here.
confirmed 10 plus
Worst.
years ago that Linux sucks.
NTFS was made for one reason and one reason only: for Windows and its user system, or its usage system, with how a file system works, the ACL, the once one process accesses the file, it is locked. It is made for that, not for how Linux does its file locking, which is doesn't, and for how permissions are done in Linux. It was made for Linux.
Were you guys really excited about the release of Debian 11 and the fact that it now supports FAT32?
I was happy about.
I was legitimately excited
Debian
for
11.
FAT32 support.
Yeah.
I was more excited that a full developer came full time on Haiku OS.
Now that's big news.
11.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Haiku.
Debian 11 for one reason only: because freeze is now over. We can again work on Debian packaging. Yay! And there is something else related, which is the reason why I was happy that freeze is over. Is with Mate 1.26 and all the stuff related to that, and it was released just at the right time, so that we couldn't put it into Ubuntu repositories the normal way through Debian, because Debian import freeze was in effect already. So Martin had to do some fun stuff, but we got it done.
Wouldn't it be great if you could base off a distribution that didn't have a freeze? You know, something like, I don't know, Arch.
No, actually, this is a
I
good.
think there's like 1,000 different Arch distributions nowadays.
Ironically,
there are. Yeah.
Ironically,
I partially blame Arco Linux because they literally tell you how to do it.
Yeah. Ironically, why I don't like the Debian import freeze, I know why it's there, and I therefore like it. It just that specifically right now makes my life a bit harder.
Although Ahmad Twill did tell us something very, very unique, in that we should not be excited for Debian releases or even Mate releases. We need to be excited about the upcoming Slackware release.
Why?
Well, we've been waiting for years for this.
I know,
release,
that's why we should be excited about it.
Does it have KDE
once it happens.
Plasma 5? Or is it still stuck at 4?
I think current Slackware does have like a Plasma 5.
Yeah, you can get it, but it's
5.3,
not. But it's not what's still. Yeah,
it's nowhere near current Plasma.
I know. Less than a year ago, it didn't have the Plasma 5.
Well, yeah. If you just go grab the latest ISO and install it, yeah, it's Plasma 4 dot something. Yeah, it's one of the really bad ones. It's one of the worst versions of KDE that they ever put out. This is the problem. And they've been stuck on that for years.
Was it? Yeah, oh yeah, I remember that, Katie. It drove a bunch of people back to GNOME, and then
Man,
GNOME was
people
like, "Oh, here's GNOME
hated
3."
people hated KDE 4 when it first came out. It was so buggy and it was slow and it crashed all the time. And people were like, "I'm going back to GNOME." And then GNOME said, "Hey, guess what? We're about to change our desktop environment."
And that's how Unity became so popular.
And that's how the community just split apart. It used to be everybody either ran GNOME or Plasma pretty much. And, you had your window manager users out there, but they didn't count. But it was all GNOME or Plasma, and then everybody swore off those desktop environments and started creating Cinnamon and Mate and Budgie and Unity and everything else.
I do have to say, Budgie is my go-to. It's really hard for me to use anything else at this point.
Mm-hmm. Budgie's nice. I like Budgie.
But Enlightenment is my all-time favorite, though.
Yeah, that's not bad either. It's nice and peppy. It's kind of like OpenBox, except it's more of a full desktop environment than OpenBox is.
Well, believe it or not, I learned some fun facts about Enlightenment. Enlightenment actually started as an OpenBox fork.
Well, OpenBox started as a fork of Blackbox.
Yeah.
Where it's inspired. There was a window manager that inspired all those other window managers. Blackbox was the original one, and then OpenBox, Fluxbox, and JWM, and all that stuff came later. PECWM.
Yeah,
there's a bunch of them.
CE and Enlightenment had their roots back to, I think, the mid-90s, 96 or so. And then, but once, if you want something really interesting, the Max Interactive Desktop is kind of it's made to look like the old Rlx operating systems from Silicon Graphics, and then there's also another one called Window Maker that is made to look like OpenStep. Those are kind of interesting.
Get Window Maker.
Ones.
Yeah, Window Maker is still in everybody's repositories. It still looks. I mean, it's to modern computer users, Window Maker would be very foreign. Let's just put it that way.
Actually, Max Interactive Desktop's not too far from that either.
Yeah.
You can still make it look pretty good if you put a lot of work into it.
In Window Maker, yeah. I mean, there's screenshots out there occasionally on Unix porn. Somebody will do something interesting with Window Maker, but it's...
Well,
I'm
the common
still waiting
desktop
for
environment is still
TWM
out
to
there.
show up on Unix porn.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm still waiting for TWM to show up on Unix porn. I think it can happen.
Yeah, I don't think that can happen. It's not really it's enough of a window manager as a default, like as a fallback. It's like, hey, if you don't have anything else available on the system, Xorg has you covered because we've got our own window manager built in, but it's not really designed for long-term use.
Okay, somebody mentioned it. Red Hat did not kill CentOS. Red Hat refocused the CentOS project. CentOS is now developing CentOS Stream.
Community
which is upstream
killed
from RHEL rather than
CentOS.
downstream.
Yes.
So no, RHEL did not kill CentOS.
Community killed it.
Exactly.
I mean, technically, if somebody wanted to continue on with CentOS, fork it,
people already
rename.
have. Please stop forking it.
That's the point. It's
I've
it
counted
never dies.
7 CentOS forks. We can stop forking CentOS now, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Can we stop forking Ubuntu? I mean,
That's a good tool.
Well,
Can we stop forking Debian and Arch?
Well, that's
Well,
what
no,
that's what Arch is doing. All those distros are going to overtake the number of Ubuntu-based ones.
Yeah.
And is that a good thing? I don't think so.
No,
Well,
I'm not interested.
Well, the thing that Arch makes it easy to make an ISO,
Yeah.
They have some tools built into it that they use to build the actual Arch ISO that you can use yourself to make your own ISO. So
Yeah.
it's all already
there.
there.
That too.
Yeah, they had the what was it? The
studio thing or
the studio,
Factory
Open
or whatever.
Studio. Yeah, it was a
OBS.
I think they still have that.
Build system.
But I don't think it's supported anymore, but it's still available.
Yeah.
Well, didn't it transformed into something else though,
Yeah,
didn't
it
they?
became part of OBS, Open Source Build System, but I think it's just tangentially supported mainly for people like corporate environments where they want to rev their own specific build of eyes so that they have all the programs already installed. It's not meant to be used for creating a distro like a fork or a distro based on OpenSUSE.
That said, if I had to pick a base for my operating system, it would not be Debian or Arch, because we all know that the Red Hat ecosystem is superior to every single one of them.
No, it's
Although I am running SUSE.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Well, to be honest,
RPMs are the Linux standardized package format.
yeah, but nobody uses RPM-based distros, yet it's the standard, right?
Well,
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of people pretend to like Fedora.
I mean, outside of CentOS on the server, well, Rocky
Okay.
Linux now on the server. I mean, think about desktop Linux. Who uses a RPM distro outside of you running OpenSUSE
I can
this
tell
week?
you right now. I can tell you right now.
Just about everybody at Jupiter Broadcasting runs Fedora these days.
I can tell you right now who runs Rail-based distros on desktop. Those in corporate environments who don't run Ubuntu.
I was about to say, are you talking about the guys at Canonical? Surely they're not using.
Basically,
Rail.
those in corporate environments that don't run Ubuntu.
I actually know somebody at Canonical
Rather
that runs
any
Fedora
company.
Rawhide.
Either it's Rail-based or it's Ubuntu-based. Anything else that doesn't come into corporate environment. If they have Linux systems for desktops.
Yeah,
That's
the
the
RPM
idea.
distros, you know, when I got into Linux back in the day, they were very popular. Mandrake, which became Mandriva, that was the desktop distribution.
Yeah.
And it just died quickly. It's just
After
everybody
Okay.
jumped off of it. You had Magia, you had PC Linux OS, which, man, I never even hear about that distribution. You know, that used to be one of the most popular distributions, and now you can't find anybody running that thing, even though it still exists.
The only person that I know that still runs PC Linux OS is Matt Hartley.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anything from Matt Hartley in years. But
Yeah, I remember Matt being a big fan of PC Linux OS. Yeah,
I tried so hard to make OpenMajeo work. Unfortunately, for some reason on any of my hardware systems, it does not want to boot an EFI. It wants to boot BIOS only, which does not work for any of my systems.
well,
and somebody,
I know one distribution that runs RPMs that is maybe not popular, but used quite a bit, and many Windows users have it installed by default.
Mm-hmm.
It's called CVL Mariner, Microsoft's Linux distribution. As soon as you have VSL installed, that thing gets installed as well. That thing is
I actually
RPM
forgot that
based,
was RPM based.
built on Ubuntu. It's one of the most ironic distributions ever. It uses RPMs as its packages, but only way you can build it is if you build it on Ubuntu.
you know what's funny about
Ubuntu
this?
is a requirement to build it.
We're talking about what is the standard package managing format. I guess according to the Linux standards base, it is RPM. But in all honesty, for the last 20 years, Debian has been the dominant package format. But if we're being honest now, Gentoo. I mean, with Chrome OS, because Google is pushing Chrome OS and it's built on Gentoo.
I'm gonna say
I
I like
have-
building RPMs are really easy to build because everything besides Debian stems from that RPM style of building packages, whether it be Gentoo e-builds, whether it be package build files for Arch. Everything stems from a very similar base as RPMs.
I was looking. I didn't talk about it on camera, but when I did my video, about Void the other day, a couple of days ago, I was actually looking through their repository of software, and I was looking at how to build packages and things. And you open up a package build, it's almost like an Arch Linux package buld.
Yeah,
it's very similar.
Same is with Gentoo e-build.
Gentoo e-builds
and RPM files for RPM. The files are basically the same. There are differences in how you write it, but at the end of the day, it's one file. You write everything in it in a pretty simple fashion. And then
Yeah.
you have dip files, which I am a packager of Debian packages, and I get mad by Debian packaging because it's unnecessarily complicated with 1 million helpers
Yes. Yes.
and everything. And I did some of the work for 1.26 for Mate Desktop and for Debian and Ubuntu, and yeah, I'm not a fan of Debian packaging.
And then people wonder why I honestly believe that DNF is the best package manager on Linux.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
Apt
is.
is better.
No.
Just the
No.
packaging method.
Apt is horrible. It doesn't even do
Currently
parallel installations.
Actually, I like that.
Actually, there is a RPM distro that actually doesn't use DNF. Instead, they use apt.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
called
PC Linux OS.
Yeah,
Because they recognize that apt is just a better.
they use apt RPM.
No,
Yeah.
actually,
Both
I
apt
enjoyed
and,
DNF so much. I actually got rid of Zipper on OpenSUSE, and I'm actually using DNF now.
Oh, don't.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did that.
Don't, boy.
So you
It's gonna be
uninstall
horrible
the.
problems.
I uninstalled Yast and Zipper and installed DNF.
Good luck.
What?
Hey,
Yeah.
it's been working for 2 weeks now.
So I want to put this out there for everybody watching because we got about 100 people watching this. Do not take the default package manager
Yes.
off your system ever. Don't do it.
I'm gonna tell you a story right now of how I installed Pacman or no
No, apt on
apt
Arch,
the
right?
package on Arch, and I replaced the whole file system. It wasn't fun.
I
And
tried that in a
hey,
VM one time. I tried to install XBPS,
Yeah.
which is Void's package manager, on Arch. And they tell me on the wiki page, hey, here's how to do this. Don't do this, though, but here's how to. So I did it in a VM because I knew it'd probably break things. It broke
It's fun.
everything.
It's fun. It
Well, hey,
worked.
Just
It worked
remember, guys,
whilst
if
it
you
was
have
running.
to ask why, just remember that it's free software. Who cares?
That exactly that is why Windows has lock on process usage. Once a process uses a file, it is locked because of dumbasses like us.
Well, I didn't do it on a real machine, Big Bud, so.
Well, I didn't either, but you know, there is a
I'm doing
dumbass
this on
who
a real
will try.
machine because I'm a
There is a
savage.
dumbass who will try. Believe me, there's a dumbass
I
who
mean,
will
if all
try.
else fails, this little USB stick has 32 Linux distributions on it, and whenever I plug this in and boot off this USB stick, it boots a random distribution.
I have a question for you guys. I read this on, and God forbid I'm gonna say Twitter, a question. It's a Linux question, like sysadmin question. I'm on Twitter because of rockets. All the rocketry people are on Twitter. So, yeah. The question was, how do you fix a problem on a Linux distro if both su and sudo are removed?
Well, I mean,
chroot.
I mean,
How do you fix an issue on a system if both sudo and su are uninstalled and root has no password set?
I was about to say, that was going to be my next question. Instead, they set a root password. And
No.
if they didn't, if root is disabled, then
Root is enabled but doesn't have a password, so you cannot access it through normal means.
you can't.
Standard
log in as
security
root,
practice.
so, yeah.
Standard security practice.
Yeah.
What do you do?
You just chroot into the system using a live disk, wouldn't you?
What if it is on the cloud
I was
provider?
about to say, what if you had to SSH into a machine? That's
What if it is on a cloud provider? Basically,
yeah.
one of the only ways to do it is reprovision, or
Yeah.
if it is local, you could boot into it in single user mode. That's another option. Or
Yeah, if you didn't have-
or using a USB drive and
Yeah,
rooting it.
If you didn't have physical
On-
access to the
on
machine,
cloud,
though,
maybe
Yeah.
you can force change passwords. Some cloud providers do that. For example,
honestly-
DigitalOcean, that's a security threat if you ask me, but okay. And some cloud providers might allow you to reboot into single user mode, but but that's about it. If you're on cloud, well, the really only way is to reprovision.
To answer Adam's question in the chat, by the way, you can totally run the Linux kernel without any of the GNU libraries.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Look at Alpine. It
I
uses
was about to-
MUSL.
Yep. Well, I mean, you can.
Alpine.
There's
I
another
think
distro.
Chrome OS does not ship any GNU tools.
Yeah, I was about to say Google doesn't use any of the GNU stuff.
In
There
fact,
is another
Google's actually trying to get away from Linux too.
There is another distro that does that, but I can't remember which one.
Yeah, Google now is they don't even want to use the Linux kernel. They're trying to make their own kernel.
Actually, that is an experiment. They want to try and make a good kernel, but I don't think they will ever succeed. Like to be at the level of Linux or
No,
some
they'd
other
have to
kernels.
they'd have to throw
They will throw so much money
money at it. Yeah, there's no reason to. Yeah,
if you
the reason they've got
to, anything will succeed. You throw stuff at the wall, and what remains, you go on.
The problem with Google is they would have to pay a lot of people to work on that kernel because it's not going to be like Linux where they do get community contributions. Nobody in the community is going to contribute to a Google kernel because it's not really in the spirit of free and open source software, even though it's going to be licensed as a free thing.
It depends. If it replaces the kernel for Android, which is, in my opinion, the only logical option for it to be replacement for an Android kernel is, and for that, people might actually want to contribute because, well, Android, a lot of people use Android.
I really do believe in that because if you look at the Android operating system as it's built nowadays, you're running like 3 virtual machines. And it's like,
basically.
no.
Technically, most operating system you are in a virtual machine of one sort or another anyway. So
the question in the chat that Josh was trying to answer from Adam, he was also saying, I meant as in what would be your reaction? Would you suffer or install Windows? I would never install Windows if Linux was an option, but as far as running Linux without any of the GNU stuff, like
that isn't the problem, really.
And it's also, are we having to build everything from the ground up? Because I mean, you'd have to use GNU's C compiler. Like if you were building like Linux from scratch, it would be hard to do. Like if you had to build Linux from the ground up, could you do it without any piece of GNU software?
Yes.
Yes, you could.
I have compiled the Linux kernel using Mozilla.
If you have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
If it is a community effort, that won't be a problem at all. Even if there are some small changes you have to do to code, because implementation of libraries or implementation of header and C files for different compilers might be slightly different. That would be a problem because changes could be made to the code.
Now, my thing with people,
community effort.
My thing with people that ask about stripping out everything GNU from their operating system, I would ask what they're trying to accomplish with that. For example, why would I not want the bash shell on my system? It's just, the standard. Why are we trying to rip out some of the good parts? Why are we trying to rip out the GNU core utils? Yes, I know there's alternatives, but they're not going to work quite in the same way. There's differences between GNU's version of SED and AWK, and these alternatives. For the most part, they're the same, but there are differences. There'll be different flags between them that will or won't be there. So.
Yeah, Ahmad there raises a good point. Just use BSD at that point.
Yes, exactly. Don't try to rip GNU out of Linux. Just go to BSD.
Well,
just switch
It's
operating.
a lot easier.
Who probably would be the person to do it, but still, why would I do it? There is no point in doing it.
Yeah, because you're installing exact clones of some of these. Like you're taking the core utils out and putting another set of core utils. It's just made by a different group of people.
And I'm the person who doesn't like GNU as it is, and I don't care whether GNU utils are on it or not. I just don't want people to say I run GNU/Linux because I run Linux. Linus Torvalds said that. Simple as that.
I run the GNU operating system using the Linux kernel embraced by the love and glory that is Systemd.
And I
And
run
on
a Linux operating system because the man who
Because when
who
you think about
created
it, those three
made
things are
that.
literally all you need to make a bootable operating system as defined by POSIX.
POSIX definition of operating system is wrong. Let's be
But
clear.
would it even count if I ripped out of all the GNU libraries, all the core utils and everything, the bash shell? I ripped all of that stuff out of my Linux. But Linux is still there, and it's licensed under GNU's general public license.
Yeah.
It's
It
not
is
under the
licensed
current
under
license, though. It's still under the old one.
good GPL, the GPL v2.
Version 2, yeah.
Most GPLs I hate. That one I at least can accept.
Yeah.
Adam is now
GPL
asking another question about Arctic
is bad
Linux
license.
or Arctic's packaging, having their own packages separate from the Arch repositories. My reaction to that is that half of Arch Linux's ecosystem requires systemd, and that's why
Right.
Arctic has to
Yeah.
package everything.
Yeah. Basically.
And most big Arch Linux-based distributions maintain their own repository of software, at least a few packages, because they're going to deviate.
Yeah.
They're going to deviate from Arch in some
Yeah, it
significant
just
ways.
makes
So
sense.
then, yeah, you got to maintain some of
Because,
your own packages.
There's a reason why Ubuntu hosts their own repository, because it can't, that sheer user base will just completely destroy the Debian mirrors if
Not
Ubuntu
just
really
that,
shipped like Debian mirrors.
Ubuntu does many changes to packages.
But yeah, there's also changes too. But it just makes logical sense. If anything,
And
to
there
at
are
least,
packages that aren't even in Debian repositories because the either developer didn't want them in Debian, just wanted them in Ubuntu, or there's some packages that aren't accepted into Debian, and so on and so on and so
Yeah.
on.
And there was many years.
Of politics.
There were many years where Debian and Ubuntu also did not run the same init system. So once again, there's some things that weren't the same in both operating systems, right? You had to maintain a separate package for some things.
Yeah.
Because Debian stayed on sys via init forever, long after Ubuntu created Upstart and did the Upstart init system.
Yep.
And then by the time Debian finally decided to get off of sys5, they wanted to move to systemd. Ubuntu didn't want to move to systemd. They wanted to keep on with Upstart. So there was this weird period where it seemed like for like 10 years, they were on different init systems.
Now Linux operating systems mainly standardized on at least one thing.
Yeah.
Systemd.
Yeah.
Well, that has become
just
the
remember,
case.
if you're going to come up with an argument about systemd, just remember that even Red Hat ran Upstart before they made systemd, and there's a reason why they made systemd.
A lot of people are still mad a little bit at Canonical for ditching Upstart because that was the last really big holdout from systemd.
Yep.
Because Ubuntu, is still such a big dominant Linux distribution. If they could have just hung on to Upstart, at least there would be some alternative out there other than Gentoo using OpenRC. Nobody runs Gentoo, right?
Except for me.
Oh, well, Ben's in the chat. How you doing,
still
Ben?
on Gentoo?
Yes.
There is a VM of Gentoo.
No wonder why your beard's gotten longer.
And also, I haven't shaved in a couple of days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. My server still runs Gentoo.
Yeah.
You're crazy.
I
I am
tried,
insane. Well, we
as
were
I
already
said
established.
earlier, Josh, I tried Fedora, I tried SUSE. I wasn't a fan.
I will be completely honest with you guys. After today, I'm getting rid of OpenSUSE because I am honestly surprised by how unstable the Plasma release for OpenSUSE has been for me. Because if I
What
try
the
anything but the default pre-installed themes,
Yes.
it just all falls apart.
Well, you
That's
installed
not
them with
surprising.
you installed them with a
DNS.
package manager that's not even a package
Support.
manager for Open.
I actually used Plasma to install this, which, as far as I know, just downloads like a tarball, extracts, and puts it in your themes folder.
Yeah.
I did not use DNF for this.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So, Ben, in the last month, how many times did you hop?
I don't know.
Because you never stay on the same thing for more than a week. Ever.
I don't know.
I think the last time we talked to you, you you went back to Gen 2, but you messed around. Was it Slackware or LFS? Linux from scratch. I think you were.
LFS, yes. LFS, yes.
I have discovered this
LFS
amazing
was,
thing with people that I convinced into installing Gen 2 on hardware. For some reason, they don't want to. They leave Gen 2 and then they seem to kind of miss it somehow. They get to using something else and they're just like, man, I could probably get Gen 2 to do this a little bit better.
Yeah.
Sounds like
So then they
Stockholm
just want to
syndrome.
go back to Gen 2, but at the same time, they don't want to wait for X to recompile whenever like GCC gets an update.
Yes.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Or they don't want to have to compile their web browser and wait 8 hours.
Yeah. That's why we have binary versions of everything.
But
Should
then
I
that
use,
defeats the point of using
Gen
Gen
2
2
with
because
what,
you need to compile Firefox. That way Firefox boots 2 seconds faster. It doesn't load web pages faster. Firefox itself loads 2 seconds faster.
Wow, very important. You open it
Extremely important.
You open it once a day. Very important.
Well, that 8 hours is not wasted then because I'm going to save 2 seconds later.
Exactly. If you
2 seconds
never update your
later-
web browser again, it equates itself.
For
Like
next
you're
week.
totally daily. If you never update Firefox after you compile it, you effectively save yourself time.
Yeah, but
But at the
Reality
same time, the security trade-off is not worth it. So you should
Yeah.
probably update your system. So patch your
reality
stuff.
is you're gonna save about 14 seconds,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna waste 8 hours again.
It's like the browsers I've done videos on in the past. I've done videos a little bit talking about Brave and LibreWolf and the Nix browser. All of those are AUR browsers. But they have binaries, but you can just compile it from the AUR as well. And I don't, in any of those videos, I don't tell people go grab the binary. So they go and install just LibreWolf, not LibreWolf-bin. And then they wonder, why is my CPU melting down and it hasn't stopped compiling for, all afternoon?
Yeah,
Like, grab the binaries.
yeah.
Yeah, I would
Always grab the binaries if you can, unless you think they've been tampered with, which is not likely.
And talking about people that have used Gen 2 tend to come back to Gen 2, I've noticed people with Arch have a hard time getting away from the AUR especially. That's usually what they come back to me. Hey man, I hopped to this, but I had to go back to Manjaro or Arco or whatever because the AUR. It's like people don't understand. Other distributions I don't think understand how important having that user repository of software is. And it's one of the things we talked about packaging earlier, how easy it is to package for Arch.
I mean,
That really is a game changer for Arch. It allows just
Wow.
normal users to package stuff, throw it in the AUR, and now you've got all this software that's really not available anywhere else.
Well, Fedora has such a system called Copper.
Yeah.
But
nobody's...
a lot of people are using Copper. That use Fedora.
Copper works for Fedora, OpenSUSE, Red Hat, CentOS.
Exactly.
It should work
Everything.
for all the RPM
Everything,
distros.
everything RPM based.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you know what's weird? Sorry, Big
Yep.
Fun. I was just going to say the Arch AUR. This is going to sound silly, but it still has certain packages for KDE4 and GNOME 2 in it.
Yep.
Yeah, because people packaged it and then
Never
those
took it
packages,
down.
well, they just stay there, right? Because
Yeah.
whoever packaged it has done moved on because GNOME 2 died more than a decade ago. So
Right.
chances
and-
are whoever was maintaining that package, they may not
Actually-
even be around anymore.
Actually,
Wow.
Mate was this month 10 years old from initial release.
Yeah. They
What you
are.
should do if you're a package maintainer,
Mhm.
maintain your packages, obviously. But if you're
Yes.
no longer interested, turn the package over to somebody else that wants to maintain it. Or in the case of like the AUR, notify them, say, hey, I'm not maintaining this anymore.
They actually do have a deprecated line
Mhm.
on those said packages, but some reason some people still run those old packages. I don't know why, but they do.
I mean, there's still a lot of Qt4 applications that see a lot of professional use, and they just haven't been updated to Qt5 yet. That's really it.
No, don't use yet word because they won't ever be.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? There's actually still certain people who are in the AUR maintaining Qt4 and Qt4 WebKit,
Yep.
which is very strange.
That is specifically for enterprise use.
Honestly, such programs like Qt4 and everything old, exactly for that reason, snaps and flatpaks were created to use old
precisely.
software to box
To
it into
exist.
something that you basically cannot escape from.
And the AUR specifically, and probably most repositories of software that are on the web, in the AUR, if you find a package and it's broken or out of date or whatever, you can actually flag it.
Yeah.
Click on a link and it'll
Flag
notify.
evaluate.
Yeah, right. So that helps. I know a lot of people in the community, they just find broken packages and they just move on to find something else. You know, let the developers know about that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still important that these distributions offer services like the AUR or Ubuntu's PPAs. Snaps, Flatpaks, and app images are a great alternative to them these days, but there's still something to be said about a true native package on your system.
Yeah.
As far as I remember, just a fun note about PPA: the most used PPA didn't have
Chrome?
didn't have any packages in it.
Wow. What was the story behind the PPA with no packages in it?
Old PPA had packages in it.
Yeah, people were
Didn't
still
anymore. Tutorials still referenced it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, good.
As far as I heard, this is all.
Yeah, that is a problem with PPAs, is that you can still enable any PPA for apt. It's just that even it doesn't check to see if there's an existing release file before it enables the PPA.
And I want to respond to this question in the chat. He says he hears clearly every word DT pronounces. Does everybody living in Chicago say so clearly?
DT doesn't live in Chicago. he lives in Louisiana.
He's in Louisiana, yeah.
You would be surprised how often I get the Chicago question, just because in every video I choose Chicago for the time zone when I'm sitting.
Well, you know what it is. There's probably a bald guy named Derek with a Chicago accent somewhere that he gets confused with.
Yeah. And like Chicago is nowhere near Louisiana. Like it's like if I got in a car and had to drive, it would probably take me 12 hours to get to Chicago.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, I am actually doing Gen 2 on my laptop with ZFS, not ext4.
Yeah.
And Josh just gave me a look of like, what?
Have fun. But
okay, you want me to explain to you why ZFS sucks?
Why?
It's owned
it is
by
not
Oracle.
Native to Linux. It is straight up not native. I have tried so hard to make ZFS work on Linux, but like the command syntax is so far different from makefs.btrfs.
Oh god.
So the commands are different. What does that matter? When you only make the file system one time, what does it matter that you had to learn a new command to make the file system?
That's a valid point, Derek. But
right.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing with the file system after that?
Even then, it's literally a single word from Oracle, and now you can't update your ZFS system, or you have to remove it entirely.
No, I think we're past that now.
Well, technically,
we still haven't gotten anything official out of it.
Yeah,
that's a valid point too.
Yeah,
but
there's
a reason why ZFS is not in the kernel.
Well, yeah, but now that
is more problem with
now that Ubuntu
allowing it to be added.
Now that Ubuntu is shipping with ZFS,
they're
never not going to offer it again. I don't care what Oracle does at this point; they'll fight it in court if they.
Oracle just put up a fight, and they got whatever out of their system.
Yeah.
And then
that is true.
It's going to be like OpenOffice or even Open Solaris or whatever it is now, Open Indiana. They got it out of their system, and then now it is what it is, and they don't seem to be interested in following back up with it. So.
Yeah. Well, also Canonical, obviously has a team of lawyers. If the
Canonical
lawyers said
an army of lawyers, if they said it's okay, it's okay.
Exactly, it's okay. They feel confident that they're okay shipping ZFS. So.
I would.
Because it's not like Canonical is a huge company. I mean, it's a big company, but it's not like they're going to put themselves at risk at being sued for millions
Hey,
of dollars, right?
Maybe Oracle will buy them. Microsoft.
Well, then it wouldn't matter, right? If Oracle owned Canonical, yeah.
Of course not.
Now I think about it, is Oracle even on the Linux board?
Yes, it should be. I know they have been in the past. I'm pretty sure they're one of the. They might be one of the platinum members.
They probably are.
I know just some of the ones off the top of my head. Obviously, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, I think is a platinum member. I don't know why Facebook needs seats on the board at the Linux Foundation, but
And the same reason why Microsoft does.
well, Microsoft
Because they use it in the back end.
is actually much more involved in Linux than people think.
Yeah.
It has been for a number of years now.
That said, Amazon still contributes more to open source than any of the other big tech companies.
Even over Sony with BSD.
Yeah.
Well, Amazon, of course, has to contribute a lot of code because obviously AWS and all of that stuff is massive, and I'm sure that is such a large code base, and they're more prone to open source things than some of the other big companies, like Apple.
Well,
Apple doesn't open source anything.
Well, I don't know if it's still out there, but Amazon even co-branded I guess you'd say white boxed a version of CryEngine. I think it was called Lumberjack, and I don't know if it's still. I think it's Lumberjack or something like that. But yeah, they basically created their own version of I shouldn't say a fork, but they had their own branded version.
And somebody in the chat was asking, why not stick with Extend 4? Well, in most installation guides and in most graphical installers, it defaults to Extend 4. Just go with the defaults unless you have a reason to change it. Like in the Arch wiki and in the Gentoo wiki, I believe the installation uses Extend 4 as an example of the command to enter. Now, Ben, he changed it to ZFS. But don't do that unless you have a reason.
Absolutely have a reason.
Right.
And, for me, I chose it because, I would have
Snapshotting?
Not just that, but because if I, by some chance, want to change distros, I have a backup of my Gentoo in a very easy way.
Yeah.
That too. The big problem with Extend 4, especially on systems that you sit there running for a while, is actually going to be bit rot. Which a lot of the times us as a traditional user might not encounter for years until after it happens. Where just say you try to pull up an image and you've had this same image file forever, and then it just won't open anymore. Yeah. I'm certain that there's a chance that none of you might not have experienced it, but I experience it quite often. And using file systems like that at least support a copyright on write feature, or even just a checksum feature like ButterFS, ZFS, or even XFS does this as well. You still see XFS used in a lot of big deployments. Yeah, because XFS is old and crusty, just like Red Hat.
It's stable.
Yeah.
Somebody was asking me, was I in any danger of the incoming storm? I would be I'm not going to be in danger, like physical danger, no. But I would be very, very surprised if I didn't lose power at some point. Because this storm, when they first announced it, it was going to be maybe a Category 3 storm, and then maybe it weakened to Category 2 right before landfall. And we get so many hurricanes here. Category 3, nothing. Category 2, heck, I ain't even going to evacuate, right? Right. So, but this thing is just under a Category 5 storm at 150 mile per hour sustained winds, gusts probably nearly 200 miles an hour when it hits the coast. And depending on how fast it gets up to the northern part of the state where I'm at, and the center of the storm is going to pass right through this area. It could still be a Category 1 strength storm with, sustained winds of 70, 80 miles per hour. That's what Laura did last year. And it was a very similar storm. And it took out major power infrastructure to the entire city that I live in. You're talking about like 100,000 people, no power at all for days. So you couldn't get food, water, gas. Nothing was open. Nobody had power. It's just 100,000 people just sitting around, everybody in their yard, grilling, because now the food's thawing out in your freezer. So just cook everything you got, and anybody who wants some food, come get it. But then after the food runs out, after a few days, National Guard comes in, gives everybody MREs and bottled water, and that it was horrible last year. I'm hoping that I thought that was going to be like a once in a lifetime event. That hurricane last year, that was a really bad experience. So I hope this won't be a repeat of that, but I'd be surprised if I didn't lose power at least for a day or two.
This is why I live where I live, because the worst I have to deal with is deer running across roads in the middle of the night while I'm driving.
Looking at the track, the center of the storm is going to pass just to the east of me if the track is correct, which is good because you always want to be on the west side of the storm, never the east side, because that's the strongest winds, because it's counterclockwise and whatever. However the storm works, the bad side is always the right side.
I'm so glad I live in Kentucky because we don't got to deal with that crap.
Man, it's getting to the point now. I'm so tired of dealing with this stuff. I mean, I like Louisiana, but damn, I hate these hurricanes. And it's like, this state is a hurricane magnet. You got the entire Gulf Coast, all the way Florida, all the way wrapping back around through Central and Mexico and Central America.
Storms right in there.
But you got this little sliver of coast that is the coast of Louisiana. It's like, whoa, we're going to turn around and come straight to you every time.
Oh God.
Well, that's why, Derek, I think you should move to Ohio. That way I can reach out and go like, hey, hi.
Yeah, I lived in Ohio for a couple of years.
Well, if you were also in Kentucky, Derek, we could hang out every now and again.
Yeah, Kentucky is a beautiful state.
Yes.
It really is.
Especially in my area.
Yeah, it's very pretty.
Well, if you were in Louisville, I would invite you to hang out and have a beer every now and again.
There we go. We found a perfect place for Derek to live, Cincinnati. That way he's right between both of us.
Cincinnati's an okay town. I don't mind Cincinnati. I've hung out in Cincinnati before. Yeah.
Well,
I like Louisville too.
Only a 2-hour drive for a reason.
Hey, Lexington, Kentucky's a really nice town too.
That's actually only an hour or two away from me. Well, if you do happen to move, just saying.
Yeah, it's very hard to find a place where there's no natural disasters of any kind, because you're just trading one natural disaster for another. When you move, it's like, oh, you don't have to worry about hurricanes anymore, but now it's earthquakes.
Well,
if you go to West Central Ohio, it's nothing but hills.
Or wildfires out west that burning every year now.
Point, but,
well, you're gonna have an awesome life.
Yeah, you got tornadoes. Yeah, in the middle part of the country, you've got snow. Obviously, the further north you got, sometimes large amounts of snow. DT does not handle cold. Right.
Well,
come to Europe. Come to Slovenia. Or something like that.
I'm in Vienna. You're in Slovenia, and here it's nice about the weather conditions and also with natural disasters. So Central Europe, it's a little cold. People are unfriendly, but just be nerdly and
it's cold. It's cold in many ways. Let's just say that it's cold.
It's cold in many ways. I think we might agree there. Yeah.
I like how Stefan doesn't try to apologize. These people are just unfriendly. He doesn't try to sugar.
No. I'm in Vienna, where actually being unfriendly is part of the culture outside.
God. Europe doesn't have that many natural disasters. Maybe there are some earthquakes, but not that much. Maybe some flooding if your house is on a flood area, but otherwise nothing much. And there are potential unnatural disasters that can occur, like nuclear explosions. Because
the only downside about coming up here, Derek, is finding a job is not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah.
Well, DT already has a job and he can do it from anywhere.
Oh, it looks like the eye of the hurricane is just now on the coast, so it looks like the landfall has happened.
Thank
So
God.
I would expect later this evening to start seeing some heavy rain, and probably tomorrow. You're not going to get any content out of me tomorrow because
You'll probably.
it'll be the worst part of the storm. Even if I still had power,
It's not
probably
worth
just be
it.
it would be noisy. Right? It would be,
Yeah, you don't want to be in a strong.
there's no way I'm coming to the office either because I'm not going to drive during that. Now I have a home computer though. I
Oh,
don't know.
cool.
Yeah, I could at least record some stuff, pre-record
At
some
home,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, assuming we got power. But
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's a big if.
Yeah. Well, you can always chat with me at the worst case.
If I've got power.
There,
If you
there's
have power,
an
yeah.
alternative solution to this, Derek. I highly recommend that you restart the Obscure Window Manager project.
That would be fun.
I've thought about it.
I think
going
it's
back,
time for an update.
Yeah.
Because half of those window managers that I talked about, I know I named it the Obscure Window Manager Project, but some of those window managers are really obscure. Like some of the ones I covered, like Tom's Window Manager, TWM's not even, like we said, it's not even a real window manager. I mean, it's a window manager, but nobody should use it.
No.
PECWM, which is another open box clone, that hasn't seen development in at least a decade. I don't know why I covered that thing. I like it. It's the only reason I covered it. I used to use it years and years ago. But nobody should be using that thing either.
No.
Right.
Just like nobody should be using KDE4 anymore.
Slackware?
Why shouldn't anybody be using a window manager that has been developed in 10 years when Xorg itself has had a feature update in over 20 years?
Well, at least it has
God.
security updates.
Yeah.
It
That's
has
the
security
important part.
updates, but that's
That's
about
the
it.
important part, security updates.
The problem is sometimes these window managers and desktop environments, these old ones, like CDE, the Common Desktop Environment, which was a desktop environment 30 years ago on Linux, there's security holes in it that people have found. Nobody's developing CDE anymore, so if you installed it, you would just have to recognize it's not a secure piece of software. Right.
No.
So you could run it, but I wouldn't.
No. Just like you can still run like GNOME 2 or KDE4, but you're not going to get very much out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, running those old GUIs is like, waiting for crap to break, or you're not going to have a nice looking GUI, or it's just going to look, you're going to be like, how the hell did I install this?
I know people have nostalgia for GNOME 2, but at this point, Mate. I mean, just move to Mate.
Yeah, just load up Mate or KDE5 and just live with it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you really tell much of a difference anymore?
Sorry?
Honestly, with how Mate and KDE, and if you're honest, almost any desktop environment that is meant to be that way, like even GNOME, they're so customizable. You can basically make them however you want to make them. Whether it be GNOME, whether it be, if you put enough time into it, GNOME, KDE, Mate, XFC, you can make them all exactly what you like it to be.
Yeah, for the most part. I have no problem running any of the big desktop environments, any of them. Even GNOME, it's not my favorite, but I can make it work. I mean, at the end of the day, you can change the stuff you don't like about them. Most of them, you can get it worked out.
The only one I can't make work is DTOS because it doesn't exist yet.
Well, that won't be a desktop environment.
Close Emacs.
Yeah, that won't be
that won't be right.
Well, you know what? I thought about that. Wouldn't that be cool if you just boot directly into EXWM and then hope everybody knows how to use Emacs at that point?
Yeah.
Don't.
We could even do like a vanilla GNU Emacs with the key bindings that nobody knows.
And then, but you have to at least then do something normal like install the most weirdest version.
I know it's going to sound a little far-fetched, but if you include Emacs, I would just rip that out and go to Vim or Nano.
I
That's
would
like
just
half the
call
key
Nano.
bindings that Derek uses
Yeah.
these days, though.
you can't rip out Emacs if Emacs is the window manager. Ben, that's the
Oh,
what
God,
EXW
you're
is.
right.
You log into Emacs, and Emacs is the window manager. If you kill Emacs, you kill the window manager. You just get back into the
Into a
TTY.
TTY.
Let me
Yeah.
tell you a secret how to do that. Sudo pacman-s novum
XFC.
desktop.
I have an even better solution.
What?
Sudo rm-rf no preserve root.
No.
Oh, God, no.
Don't do
You
that.
would, you would
You
kill
know-
the entire OS doing that.
That's
You know
fine.
what?
However,
If I-
if you run that command successfully, you won't notice it until you try to load something else because your system will continue to
Well,
run out
still,
of memory.
yeah,
Just
you're right.
like-
It's still loaded in memory until you log out.
You know,
Yeah, you
the-
wouldn't notice anything until you log off. Yeah.
The reason that is the deleting of root is possible is because Linux doesn't lock files on process load. When they're attached to a process, they don't get locked like on Windows.
And in the chat, GNU Ninja says the developer of EXWM seems to have disappeared. Hope they're okay.
It's
that
fine,
happens
been
with
proud
a-
of him.
That
Yeah,
happens
with
with
a
a
lot
lot
of
of developers. So, and sometimes they people work on the software as a hobby. And they've got things going on in life, right? So it's not uncommon for even like maintainers of Linux distributions to completely drop off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? If I did do something where I booted people directly into Emacs, it would quit. People would stop making fun of Vim as far as, hey, I can't exit Vim. How do I exit? There's no way these people are going to exit out of Emacs, right? Especially with the default key bindings. If you don't tell them how to do meta X to get the command menu, heck, no chance.
It's one of those things where development sometimes takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
I mean, not to pry, but it's starting to take a toll on me with my Storm OS. I'm starting to get like severely burnt out on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love doing it, but there's just comes a point where it's like,
Oh yeah.
it takes a strain.
And people,
Yeah.
Josh was asking about DTOS. Well, the first thing I need to do is figure out what programs I want to install. And some of these programs I want to package them myself, keep in my own repository. And just packaging software is tedious sometimes. It's a long, lengthy process, and then sometimes things break, and
Yep.
and that's just one aspect, right? That's just one little aspect of just
Yeah.
maintaining
You're
packages.
talking to a guy who is actual packager.
It's a great time to reflect on the software that you use and the growth and the reason why if you ever go to a conference and somebody says they're a package maintainer, you need to stop everything you're doing and hug them.
Yeah.
They need the hug.
Those people,
Big
especially
Pod,
those people
if
who,
you and I ever meet in person, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hug you.
and I'm nothing special, but those people who do it for serious, like those who are Debian package maintainers and Ubuntu package, and those people are rock stars.
Yes.
And same for Arch, any distribution. Those people are rock stars. Because
Yeah,
they
but
have to be on top of everything, and so much it's crazy.
I would say a lot of people don't get the thanks they deserve, like documentation teams for some of these large distributions. Like, how many
Yeah,
times
well-
have you had to go to the Arch Wiki, the Debian Wiki, things like that, and look up an answer? And have you thought that somebody had to put that there? Somebody had to take time out of their lives, usually not for a paycheck of any kind, and give you that documentation that you needed. My favorite, though, is the Gentoo Wiki, Ben.
Yeah,
The
Gentoo is.
The Gentoo Wiki is quite amazing.
Yes, it is. But I mean, if I
The
was
handbook's a little wordy, but the wiki itself is.
That's
great.
why I like
Yeah.
it. I actually like it because Gentoo assumes everybody's a complete idiot. Where the Arch Wiki, because I dig in the Arch Wiki all the time looking for solutions to problems that I create. The Arch Wiki is so frustrating because it assumes if I'm looking up a certain thing, all the steps that lead up to it, I already know about. No, Gentoo. All right. Did you burn the ISO? Did you, go
did you
do
this? Did you do that? Yeah.
Hey, let's
They
explain what a
actually-
file system is. Let's explain what a bootloader is, because I know you don't really know what it is. Arch does not do that.
Yeah, there was a YouTuber like a couple months back where he decided that he was going to install Gentoo. Had nothing to do with me pushing him to do it. I totally swear, even though that's exactly what happened. But he installed Gentoo, and he was reading through the wiki, and he encountered my number one complaint about the Gentoo handbook is that the Gentoo handbook does have warnings listed in it, going like, "Hey, after you're done reading that giant wall of text, but before you do that, you should read this very, very important part."
Yeah.
Why is that after the example command?
Yeah, that is kind of a
Well,
pet peeve.
Yeah.
Well, warnings come after the spells.
Yeah.
Quote from Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I like about the Gentoo handbook versus the Arch one, is the fact that they actually tell you use with caution.
But they still don't have very good documentation of how you can install Gentoo with
No, they
using
don't.
System D.
System D, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that documentation is horrible. But what
Yeah.
Arch now has that Gentoo lacks, or at least I
What?
think it lacks, is an actually good command line installer.
Yeah, they actually have
Automatic
a script installer. Yeah. That would be nice
I don't
if
think-
Gentoo did that.
I really don't think that with like something like Gentoo, you can actually use
Sorry,
it
guys.
as an installer.
But yeah, I
At
wish
least not one
that
that the
I
Gentoo
wish
level
that
can
Arch would allow Gentoo to adapt that. I mean, it would be so nice.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I don't see that happening. I just don't.
I think it's less of an issue for Arch to have an installer because the installation process is so easy anyway. The command line installation, that's not like it's
Not hard.
difficult.
No.
Yeah, I would say the Gentoo installation actually wouldn't be that hard. It's just the fact that it's lengthy.
Yeah,
That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Gentoo
would-
installation is just as hard as Arch's. This is so long, you die 3 times in between.
But it
all
would be
days.
nice. They could very easily have a graphical installer. It would be very easy for them to put Calamares on the system and then have slides. Hey, which kernel do you want to install? Would you like a pre-built binary kernel?
That
Would
sounds
you
like
Like a
calculate.
Gen kernel or something like that.
Right, exactly. Would you like a binary of Firefox instead of compiling for 8 hours?
Yeah,
Yes,
or
please.
Chromium or
LibreOffice and all
Yeah.
that stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, as cliche as it sounds, I have actually thought of making something like that just out of, etc.
Yeah.
But the problem is I can't find a decent way of doing that. I mean, yes, there's Catalyst, but Catalyst is like, such a pain in the ass.
One of the things I really like about Red Core Linux, which is based on Gentoo, is it's got a graphical installer, Calamares, and
Yeah.
it installs in like
Okay.
20 minutes.
Okay.
And then after that, if you want to go play with the make flags and you want to
etc.,
compile,
yeah.
I mean, a merge is still there. You can do that, but you don't have to.
No, you can just use their GUI Sisyphus to install stuff.
Right, exactly.
Well,
Manish in chat is asking the real question. I heard Gentoo required compiling stuff. Why would you use it? There's a reason
Well-
why I use Gentoo on a lot of my systems. Even though you guys see this video feed of me, I live in what's called an efficiency. So basically, everything in my home is compiled into a single room. But I have a lot of self-made IoT devices here,
Mhm.
and a lot of them are actually based off of Raspberry Pis. Now, installing Gentoo on a Raspberry Pi is not for the faint of heart.
Don't
But-
do it.
No, it's not.
But that Raspberry Pi boots in less than 2 seconds.
Don't do it. Guys, if you're
Don't
listening, the
put
chat,
Gentoo
don't do
on a
it.
Raspberry Pi.
It
and
boots in 2 seconds,
that is important. Why?
and it idles at a lower power consumption than Raspberry Pi OS.
Oh god.
And
That's why
Yeah.
you install Gentoo.
why is it important that it boots in 2 seconds? You're gonna boot it once every blue moon.
He does He makes a good point, though, Josh does, because that is kind of why I think Gentoo has a use for some people, is some people have really specific hardware needs. Like, Gentoo still has images for 486 architecture. Who the hell has a machine out there that's running? No, but if you did, the only Linux distribution I know that you can compile for that is Gentoo. So
like an embedded system or something.
Right.
Yeah, an embedded system or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, Gentoo would destroy an SD card on a Pi. That's why you can use a USB drive for Raspberry Pis nowadays.
Yeah. The Raspberry Pi does have the ability to boot off a flash drive.
You would have to probably, I don't know, and maybe an external drive.
Well, the benefit of the Raspberry Pi, by the way, is after you finally get your Gentoo image made for one Pi, you can just clone it for every single one of them.
Well, you know one secret when you're installing especially Ubuntu and almost anything with Calamaris installed, you actually are installing basically from an image. Yeah. You're taking a SquashFS image and splatting it onto disk. You're doing nothing. You're basically doing exactly what you're doing with images on Raspberry Pi. That's exactly what it's doing.
And that's really what takes the most time of the installation process is unsquashing that image.
Unsquashing that image, then splattering it.
Unless you use the ZSTD compression.
Depending on what compression they use.
If you guys have installed as many distributions as I have, you probably notice in the Calamaris installer, you get to about 27% or 29%, and then it hangs there for a long time. And then it's at 90%. That was the unsquashing of
and that's because a lot of That's because a lot of Arch distros, especially, they use XZ instead of ZST.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of compression.
ZST is good for a lot of small files.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's why in StormOS we use ZST instead of XZ because I got tired of waiting for it to go like.
That's why certain snaps take a hell of a lot of time to open. It's because by standard they use XZ with XZ compression, which is good for making big image small. Problem is that it isn't good with small files. ZST makes a bigger file at the end of the day, but what's inside can be a lot of small files, and it will splatter them a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in the chat, I've got Manish says, I switched to Linux because of DT's commercial of Windows 11. Not disappointed, but confused. A lot of confusion. Well, it's something new, right? There's going to be a lot of confusion, especially if you're watching this stream here, because this is a group of nerds talking here. You're not going to understand anything these guys are talking about.
Don't ever take my advice.
99% of what we're talking about, nobody's going to turn their head and be like, what?
Yeah. Someone was asking me about Rlx Os. Put that on the to-do list. It looks interesting. It's an alternative to NixOS. Oh, I have actually never heard of Rlx Os, but I will jot that down.
I've been meaning to actually try NixOS. I just haven't gotten around to it.
My neighbor's actually a maintainer of Nix, so he became quite a good friend, and I'm actually thinking of getting rid of some CentOS servers and deploying Nix on them with Dockers. I mean, it feels harsh to do so, but there's been put quite some thought into it, so I'm kind of tempted to go on it full for web stacks and stuff. I think it's really cool also with Docker. It integrates really well for deployment and stuff. I like it somehow.
Well, that's where things like Nix and Geeks shine, is these reproducible builds. You configure them one time, and then you can just quickly spin them up on 10, 50, 100 machines.
Yeah, and you can do it without cloning a disk.
Right.
Yeah.
All you have to do is write that one config file.
Yeah, write a config file and start a service, and there we go. It's cool. It's harsh, but it's cool.
Or I guess you could develop an Ansible playbook and learn Python scripting in order to make your playbook, and then figure out how you can make Ansible actually work network wide.
For basics, you don't. For most normal stuff, you don't need to learn Python to do Ansible playbook.
No.
That's first thing. Second thing, running it on network is really easy. Just have a command line Ansible on one machine, and you just create an inventory file, and it does everything for you from then on. Ansible is great.
Eddie in the chat says he wants to thank me. Your channel got me back into Linux and Arco Linux. Yeah, Arco Linux is great. Eddie, if you're not following Eric Dubois, who is the creator of Arco Linux, he has a great YouTube channel where he posts, I don't know, like
Fantastic
3-4 videos a day about developing Arco. Mostly he's always talking about the latest that they're doing on Arco. And it's a great channel, not specifically about Arco, because most of what he talks about is applicable to any distribution you run.
Mhm.
So check out Eric Dubois on YouTube.
Copying commands off of a Google search result. That's a brave
Don't do
person
that.
right there.
Don't copy anything off of Stack Overflow. If you don't understand what the command does, just
Yeah.
don't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
especially if
the-
it involves the word sudo at the very start.
Yeah.
Or RM.
There are a lot of great examples of people copying their code or scripts or
Yeah, and they're all on askubuntu.com.
or anything from Stack Overflow and Stack Overflow based sites.
I've seen several commands that people have shared. People will ask, hey, I've got this problem. I got this situation. How do I solve it? And people will post some code. And there have been situations, I won't say the code was necessarily dangerous, but if you mistyped one thing or you just rearranged the order that you did these steps, somebody could completely hose their system.
Yep.
And if you didn't know that, you may think, I can do this in a different order and get the same result. No.
I remember I listened to some guy speak. I actually watched a video of the speech on YouTube. The guy's name is Troy Hunt. He made the Have I Been Pwned website where you can search if your password was leaked and stuff like that. And he is a big security guy, and he has a bunch of these talks. And during one of the talks, he talks about an app that he found had a problem, or someone during one of his workshops found had a problem. And after the app was updated, after he reported it, and there was big back and forth. The app was reported or updated. They had one nice thing that was shown in the text. It basically said this sharing is the spirit of Stack Overflow. So guess where the developer got the code for that
Stack
app.
Overflow, yeah.
And what was most, he then actually found that Stack Overflow question that was on, and what he found out, that person actually retyped the whole thing. How did he know that? In the original answer on Stack Overflow, there was no typos. In the app, there was a typo.
One of the things too, people run into this problem with my configs all the time because they'll open up issues on my GitLab. People will do a copy and paste and think the copy and paste is going to respect the indentation and all of that. I've had this especially with Haskell code. People will copy portions of my Xmonad config, and then it doesn't respect the indentation. And Haskell's really picky about spacing.
If you're just copying inside file, most won't care about indentation unless
because in Haskell you have a block like the do block or any block you create. You know this variable equals, and then you have a whole bunch of stuff. Make sure all that stuff below is on the other side of that equal sign. If it ever gets on the other side, Broken. Will not compile.
That's why you just
Especially-
pull down DT's config files using Git, and then just whenever you want to try like some new configuration that he has set up, you just do a Git pull,
Git
and then,
clone.
and then just
You need to
copy the
Git-
files directly.
there is a simple trick to make that work with so that indentation won't have a problem. You need to pull it down and open both files in same editor. Because what they do, they open it in GitLab website and they copy there into
whatever
Vim, code, whatever.
Not gonna lie, I've done that, but I've also learned to fix the formatting too.
Yeah. That is where the problem lies. If you have
But
a
9 times out of 10,
editor, it won't be a problem.
9 times out of 10, when somebody asks me about one of my window manager configs, the first thing I ask them, hey, did you do a copy and paste or did you do a git clone? Because if you did a copy and paste, I already know what's wrong.
Yeah.
Let's see. Will the storm destroy or it's good? I don't know what the storm's going to do. It's going to be a bad storm. Though. It's a strong hurricane.
By the way, Derek, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Can Emacs take pull from Vim wiki syntax and convert to org mode?
Vim wiki syntax. Most people with Vim wiki though use Markdown. Are you using the proprietary Vim wiki syntax?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I bet there is a way to do it though.
Because
but if you did it in Markdown, like most sane Vim wiki users, then obviously you could export.
We already know that I'm not sane, and I actually prefer Vim wiki syntax and Markdown because the Markdown that Vim wiki uses is different from like the Markdown that I learned. Just like what? The Markdown version that I learned was Reddit because Markdown's not standardized.
Vim wiki to org mode. Oh, somebody has a web page about it. I'll paste it in the chat. Yeah, I'll paste it in the YouTube chat because there may be people on YouTube that may find this interesting. But this was written not too long ago, March of this year.
Only needs a parser, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because
there's a program called VimWiki to org.
distro.tube.com. But at the same time, it's just like I can't bring myself to install Emacs just to use org mode to write this stuff.
Well, you can write org in anything. It just won't render it with all the syntax highlighting and it won't change all the asterisks to bullets, and all that. But you can write org mode in Vim or Nano or any editor you want. It just won't have the fancy highlighting.
You can write crazy wherever you want, but you can only see crazy in Emacs.
Yeah, and you won't get any of the stuff where you could see the results of your source code blocks inside a document. None of that kind of stuff will work. But you're just writing some text, like a text article. Yeah, you can do that in org mode in any editor. But honestly, you should just have Emacs installed for it.
I'm actually reading this post right now.
If you use Vim, there is an org plugin for Vim. It's not terribly good, but it works. It's okay.
Well, that's one of the reasons I nowadays like my text editors in a browser. I can have a text editor that allows me to be in a browser, and that's it.
I wonder if there's a browser org mode editor. I bet there is if I did a Google search for it.
I bet someone was crazy enough to make an org mode extension for VS Code.
Yeah, org mode is so useful, I would be surprised if somebody hasn't tried to tackle that problem.
If there is for Vim, then there is for VS Code.
Yeah, you would think.
You can open VS Code in a browser, I can tell you that much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have it in about so many containers that it basically almost destroyed my server. My server is currently sad. Doesn't work well.
Yeah, I'm looking at the track for the hurricane since people are interested. It looks like it's going to pass actually a little further east of me than I originally thought. That would be great if it did.
Yeah.
The further to the east it goes, the less of the impact on the other side of the storm. not as bad. So yeah, it may be okay. We'll see though.
Great.
Obviously, I'm going to get a lot of rain tomorrow for sure. I'm just hoping I don't get as much wind.
Here, when people on the by the sea where there is a lot of wind, actually they have a special name for that wind called buria. They actually had stones on the roof, on the shingles, so that those shingles don't get blown away.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that happens here all the time in the middle of Vienna. There is a lot of old housing substance, and some roof tiles get blown off from time to time. That happens quite some time here. Actually, a few years ago, somebody actually got hurt quite bad, also by breaking of branches and trees and stuff. Because a lot of stuff is quite old here, so yeah, weird stuff happens, I guess.
No. And somebody in the chat was saying there is one for VS Code. I'm assuming an org mode plugin.
Org bullets.
Org bullets is really nice. That's a package for Emacs that changes those asterisks. So when you're doing the outline, you have 1 asterisk, 2 asterisks, etc. And if you want those condensed down into a single bullet, that's nice. It'll have the bullets, different colors, different shapes and sizes. You can make them whatever you want, but just out of the box, the default packages. It looks really nice.
Yeah, maybe I should just give up and install Emacs.
Yeah, I mean, what do you normally use for an editor?
Believe it or not, I actually use a mouse pad normally.
I was waiting for Notepad++, but thank you.
No, not Notepad++. I do have Notepad QQ installed.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I actually just use mousepad because it works.
Yeah, mousepad is not a good text editor, though.
No, but it supports everything that I care about, which is syntax, highlighting, and line numbers.
You'd be better with gedit.
I probably would be.
Yeah.
Actually, the Mate text editor got better, apparently. I don't use it, but apparently it got better.
Which one is that?
Adam?
I don't remember the name. Pluma.
Pluma. Okay. Yeah, but that's a fork of gedit. Yeah. That and Zed is another fork of gedit. All 3 of those are basically the same. So you can grab gedit plugins and use them in Zed and Pluma.
I don't know. I believe that didn't work for a long time.
It didn't work?
So I know they have a new add-on system now in Pluma.
Also, yeah, because gedit obviously is still going forward in development. Depending on how far away we get from the forking, things start getting a little iffy. But I know in Zed, which is XED, that's the Cinnamon one. Gedit plugins were working in it just a few months ago because I did one in a VM, or I added a plugin.
Does anybody use Atom at all?
No,
probably not too many people probably these days, because the problem with Atom, was it was always really slow.
Atom is basically a reference program for Electron. That's what Atom was made to be.
It was the Electron program.
Yeah,
right.
And then Microsoft made a better version of it with VS Code. But basically, and they were basically not at the time connected to Electron in any other way than making a program, and they did a far better job than GitHub did with their own framework.
And someone in the chat was asking about Sublime Text. He says he found Sublime Text in packages. People often will tell me how great Sublime Text is. I like using free and open source software, so I don't use it, but that's just me. I know a ton of you guys use Sublime. I'm sure it's fantastic.
Sublime is apparently good, but it's if you want to use it, it's paid software, so use it on your own.
It's good for paid software.
Yeah, and on Linux, it may be hard to find Sublime Text package in certain distributions because some distributions are more free
Yeah.
than others. On Arch, it's fine. You'll find Sublime Text in the repositories. I don't know if it's in the standard repositories or the AUR, but it's there. But on something like Debian, yeah, you're not going to find Sublime Text in the repositories.
That's why on Ubuntu you have snaps.
Yeah.
Well, being a self-taught guy who never studied or had proper education in the field, I actually liked VS Code since it had quite good reference and a lot of visual appeal. So I think it's okay to use it. I mean,
Yeah.
to begin and get it quickly installed, and it might be less intimidating than Vim. So I think there's a point in doing that. It's okay from my point of view.
I have formal IT education and I also use VS Code. So
Yeah.
Ahmed is mentioning Kate from KDE, which I have actually been using the past couple of weeks, in all truth. And
yeah,
I'll be honest, I can see Kate actually being a pretty solid text editor.
If I remember right, I mean, doesn't Kate even have the mini map on the side and all of that? Like Kate's got a lot to it.
Kate is basically trying to be an IDE.
Yeah. It's much more than a plain text editor, like in the Notepad sense of the word.
That's anything made by a KDE team, though. I mean, I think they had a file manager that was actually a full-on web browser that they still develop.
Conqueror.
Yeah.
For you power users out there.
It kind of made sense. I mean, even in Firefox and Chromium and things. I mean, you can browse your file system in your web browser, any web browser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just use the file protocol instead of HTTP.
Don't do it.
It doesn't look good, right?
No, don't do it at all. It's crazy to do that.
Yeah. VS Codium is better, says Ashen in the chat.
No, it's not.
I don't know if it's. Yeah.
At that point, it really comes down to a question of how privacy focused you are. Because VS Code does work better with the extensions than VS Codium does. But if you're just using bone stock code, then VS Codium is actually perfectly acceptable. I'm not going to say that it's better. It's acceptable.
VS Code has access to much more extensions because you can use Microsoft's VS Code extension market, which is not accessible for VS Codium or other builds of VS Code.
Right, because they ripped all that stuff out. I mean, that was the point.
No, because of that. Because of a license. You still have extension system inside. It is not connected. It is not, because VS Codium is basically a build of VS Code directly from the repository, because the repository itself doesn't actually include any telemetry stuff. That's all added afterwards.
If you do it if you build it yourself too, because it's MIT license, it's free and open source software, where technically the binary you get from Microsoft for VS Code is actually proprietary.
There is basically what's the difference why you can't access the Microsoft's VS Code extension store is because it actually you need to add keys and links, but important part is Microsoft, by its license for the store, for marketplace, doesn't allow other versions of VS Code than the official Microsoft release.
Yeah.
Which is why the extensions are so poor in VS Codium. You can get many Microsoft extensions because many of them are open source, so you can just build them yourself or get them from OpenVSX. But there are some extensions that are really good to have, really great.
You can't go get these extensions outside of the store and sideload them some way?
You can, but again, the license has a provision for that. You cannot, because you would have to download them from the store, but usage of packages downloaded from the store is not allowed for
at that point
non-official version.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. At that point, just accept that you need to use the official build, right?
Especially if you're gonna need stuff like live share or stuff like that. Officially is the way, and And actually, live share is a really good tool because you can have multiple people editing code in the same window over the internet. For example, that is good for stuff like remote debugging of, let's say, that you and your colleague are trying to debug the same code, trying to look for a bug, or someone is trying to explain you something, or there is a lot of now
Yeah,
a lot of
debugging QA work.
QA
It's
work
amazing for that.
and like code reviews. Out of the other stuff requires code reviews, so somebody else has to go with you through the code, what you did, to see that actually can be accepted into the either the open source code or in corporate environment into their code. So for that, especially now that a lot of us are, a lot of you guys who work from home, that is a really good way to go. Actually, during one of my streams, I actually showcased live share. Me and a couple of other people they basically came and tried to mess with my programming. And then one of the guys helped me and taught me Python on the stream a bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
One of you guys, forget who was it that mentioned it, was saying they use VS Code, but VS Code's nice because if Vim intimidates you, you can still learn Vim and use VS Code because most text editors, most IDEs these days have Vim emulation layers that you can add that will emulate the Vim key bindings and everything. I know VS Code does that.
Yeah, well, I was just doing it in parallel. I started and I needed something easy to start. I also liked, for instance, a easy-to-use, clickable Git assistant. So I didn't have to mess with a terminal and just getting started with all of that sort of stuff you need to get started at some point.
Yeah, VS Code is amazing for anybody that's just getting started like that. Because you don't have to learn how the editor works. It just works.
No, yeah.
Emacs is like that too.
It is indeed. I agree. But yeah, it's nowhere as nicely explained and as with as much click space as somebody called it today.
The great thing about Emacs, though, is everything is documented inside Emacs. Like every piece of code you add to anything, any ELISP module or library, you can look it up right there inside Emacs. You can find everything that's going on if you take the time to read it. The problem is it's such an orgy of documentation. It's so much stuff to learn that it's overwhelming to most people, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, people are not used to read documentation.
Yeah, exactly.
Do their stuff.
If you're a very new beginning developer, Vim is intimidating if you've never used an editor, if you've never used a modal editor like Vim or Emacs before. And that's why you should never learn Vim at the same time as you're learning programming, because you're learning two very different things.
I would say that anybody can learn
it's useful to learn Vim
in like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
like the basics.
Vim, and anybody
you can learn it in
Vim.
30 minutes. Yeah. Run through the Vim tutor. Open up a terminal, type Vim tutor, all one word, and then just read that documentation. As you read it, press the keys that it tells you to press, because it's telling you exactly how to do things. And it explains exactly how to move around in the document, copy, paste, and all that. And then once you've got the basics, I mean, you can gradually learn some of the more advanced stuff if you want to really dive deep into Vim.
Yeah, I agree. Just start using it more continuously on a day-to-day basis and switch. I think that's a fine way to go. Don't expect too much from yourself as a beginner. That's what I'm trying to say.
Don't watch any YouTube tutorials on how to learn Vim besides like distro.tubes, because distro.tube is the only one that shows stock Vim, which is what you should learn first.
I agree.
I actually like Vim out of the box.
Yeah.
I mean, not completely out of the box. There's a couple of things, a couple of settings I like to change. Now, if I SSH into a machine, I'm not going to take the time. I'll just use stock Vim. But on my physical machine, there's really just a few things I changed with my Vim RC.
Yeah. I mean,
I want mouse support, you know, and I want
yeah, set enable cursor.
that setting the tabs and spaces, you know, setting that stuff. Other than that, good.
Yeah, it's solid, rock solid.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of YouTube tutorials on how to get started with Vim, and they showcase installing plugins and basically turning Vim into a completely different text editor, which I understand. Even the developer of Vim says, yeah, that's perfectly fine, but you should learn stock Vim at the very least, and before you start putting in different plugins. Because I actually ran just 6 lines of my Vim RC file for over 10 years before I actually just got around to installing different things or playing around, delving deeper into Vim.
And I've experimented with a ton of Vim plugins for various things, and I can't think of a single one I really needed.
I mean,
You know, I was just playing around with stuff, but I can't think, man, this really is a game changer for Vim. Most of the time when I open up Vim, I'm just trying to edit text, and Vim already does that really, really well. So,
Well, I like plugins in VS Code or their extensions because it allows me to have code highlighting for stuff that might not be available from the get-go, and allows the integration of language servers, so I get the errors highlighted and all that, which is what should be a big thing for VS Code as well. But language servers are a standard thing.
and someone was asking about, I mentioned the Vim tutor. They asked Emacs tutor, question mark. I don't know if Emacs has a tutor like that, because again, Emacs kind of is self-documenting.
It kind of does, actually. It's not nearly as like well formatted as the Vim tutor document is. But if you install and just open up plain vanilla Emacs, there's actually a prompt that if you look at like just the splash screen, it tells you how to open up the Emacs tutor like screen. And if you do read through it, you do learn a little bit about Emacs.
Yeah.
And it shows you the basics of like how to move around, how to open files, how to close files, how to save files, and stuff like that.
There is a evil tutor as well. If you want to use the Vim key bindings in Emacs, which is called evil mode, you can look for a program called evil tutor, but it's essentially the Vim tutor because it's just showing you how to use Vim inside Emacs.
Yes, Vim does have syntax highlighting.
Oh, yes.
Matter of fact, VI improved and not VI.
Yeah, it pretty much handles most of the common languages out of the box without even any plugins.
Definitely supports C. I can tell you that much.
C, Python, Bash. Can't remember if it supports Lua out of the box or if I had to install plugins. It does do Lua out.
Syntax highlighting does support Lua.
I know Haskell works. Now in Emacs, oddly enough, syntax highlighting, you do have to install extensions for the various languages you're working in. Because I think out of the box, Shell and Python, Emacs Lisp, of course, works. But for most of the other languages, you're going to have to install a plugin for the highlighting. For Haskell, you install Haskell mode. For Lua, you install Lua mode. It's always like language-mode or whatever. And then it gives you all that highlighting for that language. And I guess the reason they do this is so it's not supporting a million different languages. If you only really code in 3 different languages, then just install those 3 packages. And all right, coming up on the end of the 2 hours here, and I do want to be moving along here. I don't want to get stuck here if it does start raining. I imagine I'm going to start getting the outer bands of this rain here in a minute. I did fill up my car before coming here this morning on the way. I found a gas station that still had gas. Most of them in the city were already out of gas because people stocking up, for generators. And I didn't want to be in a situation like or the Hurricane Laura last year, my car was on E when that storm hit because I didn't prepare for anything. I didn't know what was going on. And then I'm stuck at home. I've got a car that's out of gas. I've got no power. It's 95 degrees inside the house. It's 100 degrees outside the house. So let's get a last word from everybody. So everybody take a minute and give us a last word. Jean-Michel.
Yeah, I have nothing special to do. So I just want to thank you again for all the great videos that you do. I can use a lot and learn a lot with that. And wish everyone a good time and send greetings from Switzerland.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. All right, Stefan, you got any last words?
Appreciate your time and the very interesting talk. Thank you very much for that. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to do, and I'm definitely gonna focus some more time on hanging out with the community. Thanks for providing that opportunity. Definitely gonna stay in your supporting queue on Patreon, what others should do as well if you want to help out Derek here to keep going on with this. And yeah, hope you have a nice afternoon and all the best for you, Derek. I hope it won't hit you too hard. Thanks a lot.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Seven. All right. Other George. Are you there? He may have stepped away, or we'll come back to Other George if he comes back. Big Pod.
What can I say? I have nothing much to say.
What are your plans in the next couple of weeks? You got any big projects you're thinking about starting or something continuing to work on?
Well, I need to finish one of my projects, the final thing I need to do for school before my thesis. That's a
the thesis.
Thing.
Yeah, the thesis is a big thing.
I have one thing before I can start working on thesis, but I need to make a website till Wednesday.
Org mode.
No. No, it's gonna be something sensible.
Yeah.
Raw HTML code.
Probably. Raw
Yes.
HTML. Raw HTML, some CSS, and probably C# on top of it.
So org mode is not sensible, but HTML from the mid-90s, that works, right?
No, it will be the latest versions of HTML combined with C# and CSS.
I mean, the alternative is PHP or Python.
So yeah, C# is a thing.
Yeah, he could do some Python since he's learning Python. That might actually be a nice project for him.
Yeah, write your website in Python. You can totally do it.
C#. I'm gonna do C# because I know ASP.NET Core inside out, practically.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Big Pod. Josh, you got any wise words? You know?
I have very wise words, and this is for all you Gentoo users out there. Never call minus Qt or minus Qt4 or Qt5 in your use flags if you intend to install Emacs, because the Emacs GUI is GTK based.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Just don't mess with the use flags, right? Just don't make. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us, Josh.
You're welcome.
Gabriel, you got any words for us?
Well, first of all, kind of like, I guess, an apology for not talking this entire call. I am significantly more of a noob than literally everyone else here.
Hey,
I've only been using Linux for a few years.
It's fine.
Well, that's
Just do
more
the things
than
I do, man. You
that's
learn
more
real
than
fast.
okay. Yeah. And people sometimes ask, "Hey, I don't have a camera. I don't have a microphone. You don't have to talk. You don't even have to be on camera to join the chat. So it's perfectly okay." Oh, go ahead.
I can't remember if I really had much else to say.
You mentioned you were a noob, or a noob to Linux.
I mean, like, not noob in the sense of I've only just started. Like, you know, I've got, like, a few years ago I was messing around with virtual machines, and you know, by now I'm on Arch
That's
and all
That's
that.
how it starts. That's how it starts. The virtual machines.
Yeah.
Hey,
Um,
just
by
remember,
now
until
I've-
2 years ago, about the most I knew about Linux was how to install Ubuntu and use the software center to install applications. I actually legitimately never used a terminal.
mm. I remember trying to run exe files in Ubuntu on a virtual machine, like back in 2017, 2018, something like that.
I started using Linux in October 2017.
It's fine. Maybe, Gabriel, you can show me how to use Windows because I've actually never used Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a dual boot of Arch and Windows 11 at the moment, but I'm barely using the Windows like at all.
Well, that's good.
Windows 11 gang here.
Don't worry don't worry, man. Before too long, I'll have you installing Gen 2
Oh
and
god.
deleting Windows.
There's no reason to even go down the Gen 2 road. That's just
There are reasons to go down Gen 2 road.
Yeah, craziness.
Exactly.
So, are you running a Linux distribution on your machine now, or
Yeah, Arch.
Arch?
Yeah.
That is a sensible road to go down. So.
Wow, the sensible road, yes.
Right. Yeah, don't compile software. Just don't do it. That's the theme for today's stream. Don't do it.
I don't even think my machine really could. Like, I've got decent specs, but it would still take way
I
too
installed
long.
Gen 2 on a Raspberry Pi in a single day. I'm confident you can do it.
There's no reason to, because that Raspberry Pi is going to be glowing red hot. You could cook an egg on it.
No,
I did
actually,
have to
no.
put the fan on it.
All right.
Something up.
Well, I appreciate you, Gabriel, for hanging out with us. And of course, let me get a last word in. My last word, of course, is to thank everybody that joined us on camera today. We had some people come and go in the chat that aren't here. I want to thank each and every one of you guys. I want to thank everybody hanging out in the YouTube chat. Still got a lot of people. And you guys in the chat, thanks for your questions and comments. Some good discussions going on there. And of course, I want to thank all the patrons that couldn't be here. So I'm going to show some names on the screen here. And this will be the names of those supporting me over on Patreon. And other than that, everybody wave bye.